What's going on, YouTube? Bacon here, bringing you another video. This one going to be my week 7 battle for the VPL Season 3. This week we're going up against Dave and the Pittsburgh Pyukumukus. Dave is a good friend of ours. We've played him a couple times in the league. Well, actually, the first one was VPL Season 1, but that wasn't an official game. We just decided we wanted to play after the season ended. So that one didn't really count. I think I ended up winning that one. Yeah, I ended up winning that one with Subtoxic Encore Disable Salazzle. That was pretty fun, especially because Dave's kind of known for bringing kind of heater, Mimir type sets. It was kind of fun to use that against him. But that game, like I mentioned, didn't count, so I'm not going to count it. The next game we played was last season. He basically stomped me during the regular season. I think he won like 3-0 or something like that. 4-0. 3-0 or 4-0. I think it was 3-0. He had Coco Lucha, and I just didn't have a good way of dealing with it, so I ended up losing that game. So definitely looking to get a little bit of revenge here this week. Just kind of looking at Dave's team as a whole, I believe he's 5-1 coming into this game, and I'm 4-2, and we're in the same division. So big division game here. His differential is much better than mine, but definitely a game that I want to win this week, especially because it's going to really help our playoff picture moving forward. Looking at Dave's team, he's got Mew, Rotom Wash, KYUREM, Araquanid, Talonflame, Diglett, Mega Tyranitar, Cobalion, Gengar, Durant, and Whimsicott. His Z status user is Mew because he needs that in order to run Munium Z. So the rule in this league is you get one Z status user. Dave's used his on Mew just so he could use the Genesis Supernova. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to. We kind of added that as a proviso for Mew specifically, just because you have the added Psychic Terrain effect from using the Genesis Supernova. So that's like the main thing he would run on that if he's running a quote-unquote Z status move. Obviously Mew gets plenty of other options, so he could run something else for sure, but that's what I would anticipate he'd be using it for if he's going to use it at all. His team actually looks a little bit similar to what we've got for ourselves in the ABC. You can see the core of Rotom Wash, Mega Tyranitar. He does add webs to that with Araquanid, so that's a little bit of a problem for my team. Specifically the Coco and Greninja, since those are normally pretty fast threats for him to deal with. I'm expecting him to have a Choice Scarfer this week, especially because, as you can see, he'd end up bringing the Araquanid. Tyranitar's a threat, Cobalion's a threat, Gengar's a threat. I kind of expected them all to come. Especially because Mega Tyranitar and Cobalion are pretty decent versus my KYUREM Black, which I just picked up, I mentioned in last week's video. And Gengar just kind of blows away my team. Like Focus Blast, Sludge Wave is pretty much all he needs, and Shadow Ball, I guess, to hit Claydol. That's pretty much all he needs to run, if we're being honest, to pretty much eviscerate my team. He could run something like HP Fire for Klefki. Well, that actually wouldn't have a point because it'd do the same damage as Shadow Ball. Yeah, that's really all he needs. Coverage-wise, he could run Psychic for Hitmonlee and Nidoking and be done with it at that. Basically being able to hit my whole team super effectively. Big threat in Gengar there. Expecting either Life Orb or Choice Scarf. Choice Scarf seems like it would make some sense, but he could also potentially be running like Scarf KYUREM, Scarf Rotom Wash, even Scarf Cobalion. All of those make sense. So I got to find out which one of those is the Choice Scarfer this week. That's going to be pretty critical, especially considering my Coco and Greninja are obviously pretty fragile, and they're pretty important in this match as well. So just getting really quickly into the team that I built for this week. I had a little bit of a, I don't want to say builder's block. Well, I mean, kind of builder's block. I had some trouble building a team for this week because I didn't like my matchup on paper. So I had to come up with some kind of weird ways to win this game. Certain aspects of his team are hugely problematic. One of the primary ones being webs, so I have to make sure I have Defog on there, or Rapid Spin to remove them. And then also some of his hard hitters I just don't have good switch-ins to, so I'm going to have to pressure them out offensively and make sure to limit their switch-ins throughout the course of the match, which is something I never like doing. But given that my team's kind of as offensive as it is, I'm going to have to be kind of careful with how I play this. I was also really kind of scared of a fast, bulky Mew. Could be potentially problematic for the team, like with Will-O-Wisp to burn things like my KYUREM Black and my Hitmonlee would be really annoying. Anyways, just getting into what I brought here. I've got Hitmonlee first thing I put on the team because I realized it had a really good matchup, and I learned my learned my lesson from getting smashed by Dick in week 1. You should probably bring your fighting type Mon when you're facing a Tyranitar of any kind. So we've got Hitmonlee here. Goskowski coming through with the Electric Seed Unburdened set, Bulk Up, Close Combat, Knockoff, and Poison Jab. Obviously, Electric Seed giving me +1 defense, activates when I stand on electric terrain, which obviously my Koko can supply, and give me +1 defense coupled with Unburden, which will double my speed. Close Combat, Knockoff, and Poison Jab hit his whole team pretty hard. I could have run Stone Edge as well, potentially, on this to hit things like Talonflame and the Araquanid, but I could still do pretty good damage to those things with my other moves. And if Talonflame's alive, especially if it's at full health, I don't want to be setting this Hitmonlee up anyways, because it would obviously have potential priority flying type move to knock me out with. So one of the conditions would be that the Talonflame and the Araquanid would have to be sufficiently weakened for the Hitmonlee to sweep. Bulk Up's kind of nice because I can potentially bulk up on things like Tyranitar or Diglett if you decide to bring Diglett, which is not a Pokemon, by the way. Diglett is not a Pokemon, even with Arena Trap. It's not a Pokemon. But I could potentially get a set up a bulk up here if I come in on electric terrain versus the Diglett after, say, it kills my Koko or something like that. Getting Hitmonlee, I get the +1 defense from the Electric Seed. I'd be faster than the Diglett, guaranteed. I get a bulk up on top of that to increase my damage output a little bit more for things like the Mew and the Rotom in the back. That was kind of the idea behind the set. The bulk up I felt was more valuable than the Stone Edge because it would allow me to sweep a little bit easier. But yeah, I think Hitmonlee's got a really good potential to sweep this week. I just got to get it in position. The main kind of win cons, just looking very quickly over at what he's brought over there. The main win cons for this, to get it set up kind of cleanly, and then have the Mew and Rotom Wash be chipped, preferably at half or below, for me to knock them out with Knockoff and Close Combat, respectively. So I'm adamant, max speed, max attack. I think the speed is on there, so I can outspeed something like Scarf Gengar. Maybe even Scarf Whimsicott if you decided to run that for some reason. Whatever his fastest choice Scarfer potential was, I'm able to outspeed by running Adamant Max Speed with Hitmonlee here. Next up, we got Frogchamp coming back for yet another game. It's been to all 7 weeks this far. It's done quite well. We got Focus Sash, of course, Torrent Ability, Scald, Dark Pulse, Low Kick, and Water Shuriken. It's a good anti-lead versus something like the Talonflame. I can Scald it on the first turn. Even if he Z's me, I'll live on my Focus Sash and be able to Water Shuriken it the following turn. And of course, I could also potentially save it. If for some reason if I didn't knock out the Talonflame or whatever, potentially save it for later in the match, with the Water Shuriken being kind of nice, especially in Torrent range, to chip, to take out things that are faster, like potential Rock Polish Cobalion and stuff like that. Would still be a pretty decent hit in the back with the Torrent boosted Water Shurikens or Torrent boosted Scalds. Low Kick is primarily there for the Mega Tyranitar. I, again, didn't run that against Dick, and I paid for it. And it also hits the KYUREM pretty well, which I'm anticipating to be his primary switch into my Greninja. I was thinking like AV KYUREM would make some sense this week, although he could still run something like a Choice Scarf set. Low Kick being pretty nice to 2-hit KO that. And that's kind of the set on Greninja there. Max attack, a little bit in special attack, and the rest in the speed to guarantee that I creep the Whimsicott. Next up is Tapu Koko coming back again. We got Shuka Berry Tapu Koko with U-Turn, Volt Switch, Dazzling Gleam, and Defog. Max special attack, close to max speed to outrun the Talonflame, and a little bit into HP. Mostly Tapu Koko's here to set the electric terrain for my Hitmonlee. U-Turn plus Volt Switch is kind of nice to just kind of pivot around his team. Volt Switch being good on things like Cobalion, Gengar, Talonflame, all that kind of stuff. Volt Switch does more damage too, and then U-Turn would do more damage to something like Tyranitar. And the Volt Switch also, Volt Switch U-Turn combo also being kind of nice for a potential lead Araquanid. You'd think, okay, Volt Switch is going to do the most damage, but I know for a fact Dave would potentially think of like a Mirror Coat variant of Araquanid, so I was planning to U-Turn out on that thing if I saw it in my face the first turn, just to avoid any kind of like Wakanberry or Assault Vest Mirror Coat type shenanigans with Volt Switch, even though it's kind of risky in the first place because I could be carrying Wild Charge. But just in case, I was going to U-Turn out on that thing anyways. And then Dazzling Gleam just being kind of nice to hit the KYUREM and the Tyranitar. Not going to do huge damage, but any kind of chip is good. And again, Coco's mostly here to defog away potential webs or Stealth Rocks, and then get my Hitmonlee into setup and sweep. So that's Coco this week. Next up, we got Eternally Grateful to Claydol. Claydol's been to quite a few matches. This is Max Fizdef Claydol, nothing too fancy. Leftovers, Toxic, Earth Power, Stealth Rock, and Psychic. main Cobalion check on the team. Plan is to Psychic the Cobalion first in case he's Rock Polish weakness policy. You know, I keep saying these things like they're normal, but they're like very normal for Dave, especially given that I've had the issue with Como and weakness policy in the past, so definitely have to watch out for that, but pretty standard stuff from the Claydol here. Next up is Mr. Freeze, KYUREM Black, new member of the team coming here to its first game eligible. KYUREM Black, like I mentioned in the last video, Pokemon I'm very familiar with. In this case, we're running a special KYUREM Black with Dragonium Z, Earth Power, Ice Beam, Draco Meteor, and I am carrying Fusion Bolt just to hit things like the Araquanid and the Talonflame, especially because it gets the Electric Terrain buff from my Koko. I ran special this week because, like I mentioned, I was pretty scared of like a bulky Will-O-Wisp Mew type set that outspeeds my KYUREM Black, so he could Will-O-Wisp me, and my ICM Z, for example, Freeze Shock Nuke would be pretty useless. So I felt like special was better. Ice Beam plus Z Draco will KO the Mew on switch in if it's max HP with no SPDF. And I'm not really anticipating it to be that especially bulky anyways. I would think a more physically bulky set would make sense for my team if you were to bring it that way. So just kind of a nice nuke there with the Dragonium Z. Obviously I have some issues here with things like the Tyranitar. So basically the plan is to limit the Tyranitar switch-ins as much as possible. Miltank can kind of help with it a little bit, but that's not its primary job anyways. So yeah, max special attack, max speed to speed tie with the regular KYUREM that Dave has on the other side. And last up here, we got Whitney the Miltank. We got a SPDF variant of Miltank here with Seismic Toss, Toxic, Milk Drink, and Earthquake. I needed Earthquake to be able to hit something like the Gengar. Toxic is nice just to wear down his team, specifically things like the Tyranitar and the KYUREM. Want to get them low. Also the Rotom Wash. I don't really have great ways of dealing with Rotom Wash on my team because both my ground types are weak to water, obviously, which most are. So Miltank getting a Toxic off on that would be really nice to help chip it down for my Hitmonlee in the back. But Toxic and pretty much everything on his team is nice for me. Earthquake just hits things like Gengar, like I mentioned. Milk Drink for longevity, and yeah, that's about the Miltank set. I should note that it's Sap Sipper Miltank, not Thick Fat. I really didn't feel like I needed Thick Fat to help deal with the KYUREM unless he's running like Choice Specs Ice Beam or something. Choice Specs Draco does not 2-hit KO me on the switch-in as long as rocks aren't up from Choice Specs KYUREM Choice Specs regular KYUREM anyways. So I felt like Sap Sipper was a little bit more useful this week, just to deal with a potential Sub-Seed variant of Whimsicott, which my team was otherwise pretty weak to. So after kind of a lengthy introduction there, let's get right into the match here. We've got Dave bringing the Cobalion, Mew, Gengar, Rotom Wash, Tyranitar, and the regular KYUREM. So looking at a team preview here, I've got two pretty solid leads on my end, kind of built into the team with Koko and Hitmonlee. Not Hitmonlee, sorry, Koko and Greninja. Because I'm pretty sure he'd lead something like a potential Stealth Rocking Mew or maybe Mega Tyranitar. And I have a pretty good matchup on those with my Greninja. So I'm just going to lead off with Greninja instead of Koko. Koko was really mostly here as a lead option for the Araquanid. He leads off with the KYUREM, and since I'm Focus Sash, I don't have to worry about him Dracoing me or anything like that. I'm just going to low kick and 2-hit KO this thing. As you can see, he is somewhat bulk invested. That low kick's still doing pretty good damage though, guaranteeing the 2-hit KO. He predicts me to switch out there into something like Koko presumably, and clicks Ice Beam. So that's great for me. The Greninja stays at a pretty healthy amount there. And I'm just going to go for low kick again. Greninja's too important to risk at this point in the match, and kind of predicting the Rotom switch in and going for Dark Pulse to get off like an extra 15% didn't seem worth it to me. So I just low kick there, and I scout out the Rotom's at least running HP, but I can't really gauge its Phys-Def investment too much from that end, which is kind of important for me to figure out over the course of the match for my Hitmonlee. He goes for Light Screen here, so it looks like dual screens Rotom. I'm just going to get a little bit of chip off on this thing with Dazzling Gleam. Since I don't see an item, I'm assuming it's Light Clay. And getting off any chip on Rotom is good. Like I mentioned, it needs to be about half or below for my Hitmonlee to sweep late game without a boost. So any chip is good chip. Since he brings in the Mew here, I'm thinking this is actually an offensive variant of Mew. I Volt Switch out instead of U-Turn because, again, I'm afraid of something like a Weakness Policy Rock Polish set, which would kind of destroy me. So I'm just going to Volt Switch out here. Obviously not doing too much damage through Light Screen, but I am able to determine that it's offensive Mew, so I can go right into my Claydol here to get a Toxic on this thing, because obviously I'm expecting a setup set, and he has Nasty Plot. Shows the Energy Ball, which will not knock out Claydol from full, thankfully. I didn't calc that at all. I just assumed I lived because Claydol's pretty bulky on the special side. Getting the Toxic off while I am going to Toxic myself is fine with me. It'll limit the longevity of this Mew, and since I don't have U-turn on Greninja, it's kind of difficult to pressure this thing. I'm just going to let him kill me here. I'm pretty sure he's going for Psychic anyways, but there's no reason to risk anything. Claydol's pretty useless at that point in the match. I just click Stealth Rocks there in case he decides to set up again or anything weird like that. And his light screen's slowly getting worn down, but he still is not in range of a Dark Pulse or anything like that from my Greninja because the light screen's up. So I'm going to go out and to Hitmonlee here and bluff Choice Scarf. I'm pretty much expecting him to stay in anyways because Choice Scarf knockoff shouldn't KO him if he's carrying a Z move. So I'm expecting him to go for a Psychic move here, and I'm going to double out into my Greninja. And I do bait out the Genesis Supernova from the Mew, which is great for me because not only is it going to rack up another turn of Toxic damage, but now he doesn't have that massive nuke in the back, especially with the Psychic Terrain combo there. That would really be annoying for me to deal with because it's like it's going to OHKO everything on my team at that point. I'm going to make another scout here and go back out into Miltank, hoping he clicks Energy Ball so I can Sap Sipper eat that up, but he makes a good prediction here and goes for Psychic. I think he mentioned, he calced that he probably died to U-turn there anyways, and he would not be hitting the Greninja regardless. So good play there going for Psychic. Unfortunate for my Miltank because now it's also going to have to die to this Mew. He does go for Focus Blast there, just in case I decide to switch back into Greninja. Manages to connect it, no big deal. He's going to die to Toxic anyways. So basically trading Miltank and Claydol for that setup Mew there. Not the greatest trade, but still favorable for me in the end because like I mentioned, what I need for Hitmonlee to sweep is for Rotom and Mew to be weakened. The Mew's gone, Rotom's chipped a little bit. If I can get a little more off on that, I should be able to sweep with Close Combat from here if I can get my Electric Seed activated because I'll outspeed even Scarf variants of Cobalion and Gengar. So I just decided to lead back out here with KYUREM Black as he brings in the regular KYUREM, and I'm just going to Devastating Drape this thing. I don't want to risk him being Assault Vest or me missing Draco or anything like that. I could also leave myself as potential setup fodder if I go for regular Draco for something like Tyranitar or Cobalion. So Z Draco there just made the most sense, and we knock out the regular KYUREM with our KYUREM. I'm going to stay in here again and sack off KYUREM Black. I'm pretty sure he's going for Focus Blast here. On the off chance he misses, I just clicked Earth Power so I could knock him out, but he hits the Focus Blast again, so no big deal. I know this is Life Orb Gengar now, so things like my Greninja and my Tapu Koko will obviously outspeed it. I get a pretty free Dark Pulse here with my Greninja. Even if he goes into Tyranitar, he knows I have low kick, so Dark Pulse is pretty free here, just to get off a little more chip on the Rotom, and now it's pretty much in range of Close Combat from my Hitmonlee. It's not guaranteed depending on his Fizz Def investment, but it looks like this is a more specially defensive Rotom. So I'm thinking he's at least close to in range of my Hitmonlee, if not already in range of Close Combat. He goes for a Reflect here, and I can't let things like Cobalion or Tyranitar hide behind the Reflect, so I'm just going to defog that screen away with my Koko here, as he ends up going for the Volt Switch. So he's got a Volt Switch out into something here. Cobalion's an okay play if it's Choice Scarf, but I think Tyranitar, like he goes into here, is the better play, because it should eat pretty much anything my Koko is going to want to go for. I do have Dazzling Gleam, but that's not going to do jack to Tyranitar and Sand. And now at this point, I've still got 3 turns Electric Terrain left, so I'm pretty content to just sack off Koko here. If he goes for Dragon Dance, I can just U-turn the following turn and get a slow U-turn off, because I'm assuming he'll be faster than me at +1. But it turns out he's like max Spadef Tyranitar, so it's probably like a Stealth Rocking variant of Tyranitar here that he ran. Goes for Earthquake, crits me through the Shuka Berry. I would have lived, but it really doesn't matter. That's actually preferable for me to make sure I have the Electric Terrain up for my Hitmonlee still, because now I can get my Electric Seed activated. I'm pretty sure the Rotom's in range of a Close Combat here. So I think Hitmonlee is primed to sweep here. I get the +1 defense. I do want to go for a +1 here with the Bulk Up. He shouldn't be able to knock me out, barring a crit. With anything he goes for, so I'm just going to bulk up here on the Tyranitar as he goes for Earthquake. Does not crit me, thankfully, and now I have to start trying to sweep here. I'm at a range where I should be able to KO everything at his team from where it's at, even something like Choppleberry, Cobalion. I think I might still have a roll to KO from full. So Close Combat's going to knock out the Tyranitar. Obviously, he had no reason to save it at that point, and he's got no priority on his team either. So Hitmonlee in a really good position here. Still actually has the +1 defense anyways, but I do guaranteed outspeed the rest of his team, even if he's got a Choice Scarfer in the back. So now what Dave's got the option to do is try and stall me out of close combats. I'm going to knock off here on the Gengar because it KOs the Gengar. So I'm going to knock off here. I get the Cobalion. No big deal. It turns out it was Choice Scarf Cobalion. So like I expected, one of his Pokemon in the back had to be Choice Scarfed. It was the Cobalion. but I can just go for close combat here. Even if he goes back into Gengar, I can just knock off again, and I'll eventually wear down this Cobalion to the point where it'll get 2-hit KO by knockoff on switch in anyways, and I'll still have 1 close combat left for Rotom in the back. So I'm just going to keep making the obvious play. Knock off when the Gengar's in, close combat when the Cobalion's in. Back and forth, back and forth. There's no reason for me to over-predict here at all. Like, I guaranteed win the game from this point just by switching back and forth between knockoff and close combat. Because I knocked off his Choice Scarf on the Cobalion, a little bit more chip on Rotom, i.e. a knockoff. We'll put it in range of Dark Pulse. And in this case, he actually just sacks it off to the close combat. So now I absolutely guaranteed win with Hitmonlee here. I don't even need to worry about getting my Greninja back in. Dave's going to try to keep switching around and stall out close combats, but I think eventually at some point he's going to realize that I do have enough close combats to infinitely switch back and forth between the two and not worry about it too much. I think if he wanted to do this strategy, he should have come out with Cobalion before the Gengar, because in that case, I would have had the close combat first and then the knockoff, like way back when he brought in something after Tyranitar died. He would have had to switch from Cobalion into Gengar on a close combat there to stall out that extra one that he would need to get down to the range that he needs to be to actually KO the Hitmonlee. But like I mentioned, Greninja wins at this point anyways with Low Kick and Dark Pulse. So there's really no point in continuing here. I'm just going to speed it up just to get to the end a little bit faster. But yeah, Hitmonlee coming through this game, picking up 4 kills on the back end here. I knew in prep that it was primed to sweep, but I just had to figure out the way to get it in properly without him having set up like a Rock Polish on his Mew or his Cobalion or anything crazy like that. And I just had to get, like I mentioned at the beginning of the game, the Mew and the Rotom a little bit chipped, and everything else was really weak to Hitmonlee. So really coming through here. Nice tier 4 pickup, showing you don't need Hawlucha to run Coco Lucha schemes. So it's actually kind of a little bit of justice there, since Dave beat so many people with Coco Lucha last season. I essentially Coco Lucha'd him this week. Pretty great. I was pretty happy with the result of the match. I really wasn't expecting to win this game coming into it, because like I mentioned, I think my matchup on paper is just not good. So if we meet Dave in playoffs, we're gonna have to come up with something even more creative than we ended up with on this end. I think Dave mentioned this probably wasn't the best team he could have brought, and I would agree with him. It's not a bad team by any means, and he played reasonably well. I just think he has some better advantages in this matchup that he could utilize the next time we play, if we do get to play again in playoffs. But it was a really fun match, really good game to Dave. I'm sure we're both 5-2 now, so we're both in pretty decent position to make playoffs. Like I mentioned last video, Pace is still a couple games behind because he missed a week there. So pending the output of the result of those games, the playoff picture will become a little bit more clear. But right now, I believe there's 3 5-2 teams in our division, and then John, who's 5-1, or something like that. So it's pretty tight at the top of our division. But other than Pace, there's really nobody else with a shot to make it into that last slot from our division. So it's really 5 teams competing for 4 spots in our division. It's way more of a mess over in the Heatmore division. Oh my god, there's like a bunch of 3-3 teams over there. Oh, it's a mess. But over here, the playoff picture is starting to become a little bit more clear. The seeding is not quite so clear because there's, like I mentioned, 3 5-2 teams. So definitely want to try and get ourselves into a nicely seeded position. I don't want to have to play somebody like Tyler or John in the first round, just because, not that I don't think I can beat Tyler and John, I do, but they're generally considered to be the 2 best players in the league anyways. So the longer I can avoid them, the better, if history is any indication. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you did to this point, I hope you guys tune in next week for our Week 8 match. I believe we're playing Antonio next week in the New York Eviltals. It's a rain-based team for the most part, so hopefully I can come up with some good strategies there. But otherwise, thank you guys very much for watching again, if you did to this point, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.